Hey guys, how are you all doing? This is the MMA breakdown with my recap for UFC Fight Night 35, Rockhold versus Philippou. Very late with this recap. Usually am. Try to get these out on time, but if you're still watching this at this time, a few weeks after the card took place, really do appreciate it. But I'm going to try to run through this card quick, just give all of my thoughts on what took place and the implications as well. So, starting off with the UFC Fight Pass prelim card at lightweight, Beneil Dariush submitted Charlie Brenneman in the first round. Charlie the Spaniard Brenneman making his lightweight debut in the UFC after being booted. Booted after his last loss in the UFC against Kyle Noke. And this fight actually looked very similar to the Kyle Noke fight. Brenneman, was doing well early on, had some nice exchanges in close. Was working that dirty boxing, kind of those uppercuts from clinch range. But then Darius just landed one right on the chin against Brenneman. Brenneman had his hands down, got knocked down, and then Darius got the rear naked choke. And I just think Brenneman, he's kind of proven by now. I think he doesn't really have what it takes to make it at the UFC level, which is sad because this is a guy I really enjoyed, especially his win. His great win over Rick Story when he stepped up on very short notice. Then had several losses following that against Rumble Johnson and Eric Silva, two really talented guys. But he's a tough grinding wrestler, but he's not a striker, and he's had a lot of time to kind of make the improvements he needs to, and he's been on a good streak. Outside of the UFC, started finishing people and submitting people, but again, it's just the same story. It looked very similar to that Kyle Noke fight, just kind of hands down, standing in front of his opponent, and they just land one right on the chin that puts him down. I don't think he has the ability to take these shots. His chin might be a little suspect now, and definitely doesn't have the overall striking defense to hang with even guys who aren't even. I don't know how far Darius is going to go, but Kyle Noke is still, he's a decent guy, but definitely not a top guy, and he really had an easy time with Brenneman striking, so kind of sad to see Brenneman lose, but I don't think they'll boot him again after just one fight, but I don't expect him to really turn it around and go anywhere in the UFC lightweight division. But Darius, again, decent win over an experienced guy like Brenneman, who's had some tough fights. Didn't really see anything that really blew my mind or made me think he's going to be a top prospect, but solid win, and he got the first round finish, so good for Darius. Still seems like a low level guy in the UFC. Not too sure who I want to see him fight next. Maybe he should fight the winner. The guy who won this next fight, Vince Pichel, defeated Garrett Whiteley at lightweight in the third round. Maybe Darius should fight Pichel, but this fight was very tedious. Pichel was able to control the grappling as the fight went on. Both guys had some Darce chokes locked up. Both of them seemed pretty tight. Garrett Whiteley, I think, had the first one, and then Pichel got one in the second or third round. But Pichel had some cool slams, lifted Whiteley up and slammed him down. But Pichel, a tough veteran. He was from Tough 15, Tough Live season. And usually, as we're seeing, a lot of these tough veterans, they look a lot better on the show than they do in the UFC, and that's definitely, understood. But Pichel just, Vince from Hell Pichel, after his post-fight speech, he said Hell's back. No one's safe. I think everyone's safe. The fight was very tedious. Garrett Whiteley coming off of a first round knockout loss to Alan Patrick, and Pichel really couldn't, he really couldn't mount much offense in this fight aside from being on top and having a few submission attempts. So I don't know. Both guys seem pretty low level for the UFC, and again, maybe Pichel should fight Dariush. Yeah. On to the Fox Sports 1 preliminary card at flyweight. Louis Smolka defeated Alptekin Oskilic. The Hawaiians have just taken the UFC by storm in the last month of January. We had that fight in Singapore, and there were 3 Hawaiians there. Obviously, Max Holloway, who's been around for a while in the UFC, but Dustin Kimura also picked up a really nice win on that card, and Russell Doan, he was the newcomer, and I believe all those Hawaiians train out of the same camp. Russell Doan put on a very exciting fight and looked pretty good, submitting Leandro Issa in that fight. And then Louis Smolka, another Hawaiian guy here making his UFC debut, looked very good. Very good striking, very long. Put his combinations together real well, and his reversals. He would get taken down several times, but as he was taken down, he would kind of throw Oskilic over him and reverse the takedown. Very impressive stuff, and it was a back and forth fight. Oskilic was tough. This was a very quick turnaround for Oskilic. He fought Darren Uye-Noyama on the Fox 9 card in December, and this, I think, was only a month after that fight took place. A very quick turnaround, and he was tough. He got the takedown a few times, but Smolka really controlled the striking and those reversals when he was taken down. He was able to get on top with those. He looked great. Really excited to see him again. Great addition at flyweight, and he could really fight anyone at flyweight. We've gotten a lot of, or the UFC's gotten a lot of new talent, new blood in that flyweight division. Not sure who I'd like to see him fight, but really, I think he could fight anyone. Trying to think of, so maybe he could fight John Moraga, who won on this card. And next up at middleweight, Trevor Smith defeated Brian Houston by split decision. This was also a pretty uneventful fight. Smith was really able to get the takedown. That's how he won this fight. Houston, one of these big, strong, athletic guys, but just doesn't seem to have really the skill set, the skill level to make it in the UFC. It was a lot tougher fight for Smith though than I expected. I thought Smith was going to have a much easier time with Houston. This is 2 losses for Houston in a row now, and Trevor Smith, I don't think he looked that good, but he did just enough to get by here, to get the win. And next up at lightweight, Elias Silverio defeated Isaac Valley Flag. I picked Valley Flag, and I really had to eat my shit here on this fight. Silverio, in his last fight against João Zeffirino, I thought that was an incredibly boring fight. It looked like 2, very low-level MMA fighters. But Silverio dominated this fight. Valley Flag was just too old and too slow. Silverio was able to get that takedown, but still, that kind of he was holding back too much, and it was that same kind of thing he was doing against Zeffirino. He got Valley Flag down, and anytime he started to mount some offense with some ground and pound, started landing some hard shots, he would just stop right at the moment where it looked like he was, he could have finished Valley Flag, or, it was starting to hurt him bad. He would just stop striking and reset. I still don't think Silverio has anything for even the mid-level guys in the UFC, but he really he won dominantly here against Valley Flag. And Valley Flag, I was impressed with his last win over Yves Edwards, but I think he should retire. The guy's pretty old. I think he's over 35, and really couldn't stop that takedown against an upcoming against a younger guy who's still pretty low level in the UFC. So, he fought hard in that third round. I believe he came back a bit, but I think Valley Flag should retire. And Silverio, decent win, but nothing too impressive. I think he's definitely missing that killer instinct, and I'm not sure who he should fight next. Next up, Ramsey. Oh, and also, Silverio cut down from middleweight in his last fight to lightweight here, so that was kind of impressive. But just a side note there. Next up at lightweight, Ramsey Nijem defeated Justin Edwards by decision. I thought Nijem was going to be able to really work his wrestling, get on top, and use that ground and pound that we saw against CJ Keith. I thought that's how he was going to beat Edwards here. Justin Edwards, a guy I've liked what I've seen from him, although he's just, he's come up short a few times. But in the first round, Edwards' boxing just looked great. He was really tagging the gym, really headhunting, and I thought he easily won that first round. Really, controlled the striking and landed a lot of hard shots on Nijem. But then in the second round, I think Nijem, he was going, I don't know if he hit him, but he was trying to go for a trip takedown, and it also looked like he hit Edwards at the same time, but Edwards went down, and Nijem started to open up with ground and pound. I believe that was the second round. And then the third round, I think Nijem got the takedown again and took control. Edwards, one of these talented guys. He had a really nice submission over Josh Neer, but he's had just too many losses, and the UFC's been really kind, I think, to keep him around, and they kind of saw his talent as well, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's let go here. And then Nijem, I didn't think this was that good of a performance for him. Obviously, he got the win, and he had two really bad first round losses in his last few fights. He got the win here, but I don't know. He looked, a lot of times when guys lose, they come out really kind of methodical, and they're really hesitant to engage. They really want to, pick their shots carefully, and that's kind of what I saw from Nijem here. He wasn't his usual, self. Usually goes out there and makes it a brawl, and it's not just that that's more exciting, but I think that's how you're going to win fights, is by really going after it. And I don't know, I didn't think he looked that great here, but he did get the win. And now that I think about it, maybe Nijem should fight Elias Silverio, two grapplers, but yeah, I don't know. And Justin Edwards, I think this might be the end for him. I'd like to see him stick around. I like his skill set. He's shown submissions. He's shown some tough, hard-nosed wrestling, some decent striking. But he was on a 2-fight losing streak. He's been very inconsistent, and he just has trouble picking up wins. Now on to the main card. The main card, I think, for the most part, was pretty fun and exciting. But first fight on the main card at featherweight, Cole Miller defeated Sam Cecilia by rear naked choke in the second round. I picked Cecilia here. I acknowledge that Miller is far more experienced and was far more skilled than Cecilia, but I just haven't been impressed with Miller since he dropped down to featherweight. I think he's just really been a shell of himself, and his last few performances, he lets guys just get on top of him. He let Manny Gamburian kind of out wrestle him and win on positional control, and then Andy Ogle, he would go for the arm bars, but he'd end up on his back and just kind of sit there. And he won the first 2 rounds against Ogle, but in that third round, Ogle was able to get on top of him and open up with ground and pound and really just kind of outworked him. And I thought he showed more heart than Miller. I think Miller's been getting by on his skill level more so than Hart. In this fight, he really wasted no time. He showed a jab that he hasn't really shown before. Cecilia just couldn't get inside, and Miller was able to knock him down. He really hurt Cecilia's eye, I think, and was targeting that eye. Dropped Cecilia in the second round and quickly finished him with the rear naked choke. But I thought Cecilia, because of the way Miller has been fighting lately, just kind of laying on his back, kind of going haphazardly for submissions. I thought Cecilia would be able to get on top and use that big power that he has, but he couldn't get inside at all. And Cecilia, I think, he had a nice win over Godofredo Pepe last fight, but he's a wild brawler who doesn't land a lot of strikes, and if you don't have that and you're a brawler, you don't have much. He was finished by Honey Jason, had kind of a wild brawl with Cristiano Marcelo and didn't even look too great there, even though he got the finish, and Maximo Blanco beat him. But I think Cecilia's just not very skilled, not very. He's a not very skillful guy, and I don't think he hasn't really, he's not cut out for the UFC. But Miller looked very impressive, although I don't know that this win does much for him because Cecilia is such a low-level guy, tough veteran who's really done almost nothing in the UFC. So, good win for Miller. I think Miller should fight maybe Jeremy Stevens, who just came off a big win over Darren Elkins. Even Conor McGregor, when McGregor comes back, he's called him out before. I think that would be fine, but this win doesn't really, a lot of people said it was the best performance of Miller's career. For me, because of the level of opponent, this doesn't really skyrocket Miller up through the rankings for me, but he did look good in getting the win. Next up at flyweight, John Moraga versus Dustin Ortiz. I picked Moraga to get the TKO at some point, but Ortiz, his stock really shot up for me here. I thought he looked way better in this fight than he did in his first fight against Jose Maria. Just a real tough wrestler that the first round especially just dominated Moraga with the wrestling, really hard-nosed, scrappy wrestling. And then the second round, Moraga came back. I thought he easily won the second round with the striking. I believe he dropped Ortiz in the second round and was able to fend off the takedown. And then the third round again, Ortiz got the takedown. I think Moraga got up or did something. I thought the third round was kind of a toss-up, but I definitely gave the first round to Ortiz and the second to Moraga. A lot of people were really upset. They thought Ortiz got robbed, which I could see. I don't think Moraga looked impressive here, aside from that second round where he started to let his hands go. But he got the win, and I don't think it was that bad of a decision. Ortiz, though, I think, again, his stock for me shot way up. Showed he could really wrestle against a guy who's been dangerous at flyweight. Really kind of shut down Moraga's striking game. And Moraga, I think, his wrestling game's been exposed a bit. Was really dominated there by Mighty Mouse, and Ortiz did the same thing kind of here. So I think he's got a big hole to shore up there with his takedown defense. Moraga does. And Dustin Ortiz, I'm excited to see again. And Ortiz, I was thinking about who he should fight next, and I can't remember now, but and who was it? I don't remember, but it was a good performance for Ortiz and not so good for Moraga, but Moraga did get the win. As I said already, Moraga should fight Louis Smolka, I think. That would be a good fight. Next up, in middleweight, Yoel Romero, TKO Derek Brunson in the third round. I picked Derek Brunson going in this fight, and he looked good. Both of these guys are super athletic. Brunson landed that head kick. He landed one clean, right shin to the head, and didn't even seem to phase Romero. And I thought Brunson won those first 2 rounds. He was able to get the takedown at one point, didn't do much with it. But that third round, Romero just came alive. And this guy, it just looks so effortless for him. It looks like he doesn't even turn up the pace or anything, but just it looked very similar to his last fight against Hani Marks, where in the third round he just starts to connect with his striking, just starts touching up his opponent, and they seem to get hurt. And that's what he did to Brunson here. Just striking like he did in the first and second round, but somehow he's hurting the guy, and Brunson was all wobbly, and Romero finished him off. Very impressive stuff. I think they really need to stop fooling around with Yoel Romero. The guy's old. He's been very impressive, though, so far in the UFC, and I think they should just give him a top guy, really see right now how far he can go. I think he should fight Luke Rockhold next. I think that would be a very fair fight between those two. And Luke Rockhold obviously won on this card, but I think that's the fight to make, Yoel Romero and Luke Rockhold. And Brunson, I don't think he has anything to really be ashamed about. I don't think his stock goes down. He looked good in those first 2 rounds, really proved he could, fight on the feet and hang in there with a really dangerous striker. And also the way that Yoel Romero pulls off these flying knees is very impressive. He knocked out Clifford Starks with that in his first fight in the UFC, and he just seems to throw and land those flying knees so effortlessly and with no setup, just out of nowhere. Very impressive guy. Very dangerous guy. Seems to really come on strong in that third round. And again, I think he should fight Rockhold. Next up at bantamweight, TJ Dillashaw beat Mike Easton by unanimous decision. Dillashaw completely dominated Easton. His boxing looked very good, very clean. Showed a very good jab and followed that up with crosses and uppercuts, and mixed up his wrestling and striking very well. Also, Mike Easton was totally beat up and dominated in this fight. Couldn't get anything going. Dillashaw looked very good. Dillashaw's a guy I've been very high on ever since his fight to get into the house on Tough 15. I was really impressed, or Tough 14. Sorry, I was really high on him ever since then, and he's done very well in the UFC. Obviously, dropped his last fight against Sun Sal. A lot of people thought he won that fight. I thought he lost it, but he still looked good in that fight. And this was definitely the biggest win of Dillashaw's UFC career, dominating Easton. Even in Easton's last 2 losses against the Sun Sal and Brad Pickett, wasn't dominated in nearly the same way as Dillashaw beat him up. So big win for Dillashaw. I think he should fight Eddie Wineland. He's definitely top 10. Bantamweight's wide open, I think. Outside of Barao, Faber, and Cruz, it's wide open. Vineland's already fought for the title. McDonald just lost, and Wineland just is coming off of a win. He should definitely fight Dillashaw. I think that's a very fair fight, and Dillashaw, I think, is going to be a strong contender pretty soon. And Mike Easton, I just thought this guy was a bit overhyped. He had a finish in his first fight against Byron Bloodworth in his first fight in the UFC, and also had a strong performance against Ivan Menjivar, but just doesn't really seem too dangerous in any area of his game. Not with his striking or with his wrestling, really. I just haven't been too impressed with Easton. He's on a 3-fight losing streak now. Who knows if they're going to keep him around or cut him. I think they'll probably give him at least one more try, but I think he really needs to change something up in his game. Next up at middleweight co-main event, Brad Tavares defeated Lorenz Larkin by unanimous decision. I said in my predictions video I thought this was going to be Tavares' volume versus Larkin's power, and that's definitely how it kind of played out. I picked Larkin to win, though. I thought he was going to get it done. And I definitely gave that first round to Larkin. I thought he landed more. The fight was very tedious and very boring, though. Neither guy really went for the kill or looked to really mount any real offense. In the third round, I think I remember giving it to Larkin. I thought he defended the takedown and was able to land a bit more on the feet. I can't remember too well, but both these guys are very similar, very talented strikers. Don't really use their wrestling much, but especially Larkin, a very athletic guy and a guy who I think has a lot of power in his strikes. I mean, he doesn't really knock a lot of people out, but he looks like he hits hard. Really bloodied up Kamosi in his last fight, but they just don't go after it. They never explode. They never have a big flurry. They just kind of fight at this even keeled pace throughout the whole fight and never really turn it up. And neither of these guys are going to go anywhere fighting like this. Tavares got the win, and he's on a big win streak. I think it's like 5 fights. He is on a 5-fight win streak, but all decisions. Hasn't finished anybody and just fights too hesitantly, too cautiously. They're not going to give him big guys until he starts, really making a statement, I'm sure, and fans aren't going to care. They're only doing themselves, I think, a disservice by fighting this way. Larkin too, I think he could be so much better than he is if he just, let it go and it looks like they're point fighting out there, doing like a sparring session at the gym. I don't know. I thought it was very disappointing for both of them. But Tavares moves on, and Larkin, he lost. They're not going to cut him, but I don't know who Tavares should really fight next. I wouldn't be excited to see him against a top 10 guy or anything like that. Next up, the main event in middleweight, Luke Rockhold TKO'd Costas Philippou in the first round. The liver kick. Incredible performance by Rockhold. I was really blown away. I didn't think he would finish Philippou that easily, but just those body kicks, which have really become really kind of underutilized technique in MMA, and Rockhold showed how effective they can be, and he's really implemented those body kicks very well in his game. Fighters usually either throw a lot of leg kicks or a lot of high kicks, but that body kick, that's a good technique in Rockhold. He's got it down. Very dominant right out of the gate. Rockhold came straight forward and reeled off several of those body kicks. Hurt Philippou badly once, and then dropped him with another one. Very impressive for Rockhold. After his last loss against Belfort, came in here and really showed that he's a dangerous guy and he can finish you in the first round with a technique like a body kick. Philippou, after his last fight against his last loss against Carmont, I think, he had a good win streak at one point. He beat some decent guys like McGee and Boach, but some other guys in there weren't really, even mid-level guys like Fukuda, Jared Hammond. And the win against Boach, I don't really think that's a valid win. Boach was badly hurt by a headbutt and an eye poke there, but anyway, Philippou had his win streak. I think his time is kind of over now. I don't really expect him to come back in any big way. But Rockhold, super impressed. And again, I think he should fight Yoel Romero. Obviously, I think Rockhold's probably a little higher up in the rankings, but I I think that would be a great fight. Very excited for Rockhold. And I'd also love to see him against Bisping, or Bisping, or even if he can. I think he's a fight away from the guys like Machida and rematch with Belfort and those guys. But yeah, I really liked his performance here. So that's my recap for UFC Fight Night 35, Rockhold versus Philippou. My takeaways from the card, my big takeaways. Let's see here. Yoel Romero, continued his win streak, showed that he's a dangerous guy and a guy who could probably contend with the top guys at middleweight. Dillashaw solidified himself as a top 10 guy and a contender. I think he's ready for the big fights. And Rockhold came back in a very big way. Very good first round TKO win, and show that he's a real force to be dealt with in the middleweight division. So thank you for watching, guys. Really appreciate it. Please like the video, comment with your thoughts. Subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. Check out my predictions for UFC 169 and my recap for UFC on Fox 10, Henderson versus Thompson. Thanks, guys. Take care. I'll see you next time. Bye.